Good day, lords and ladies, and welcome back to another post-adventure review of Barony, a very Cornish Let's Play with me, Cornish-Knight, and my co-presenter, Defuax, who has been a long-time companion with me on our adventures into Barony. Now, we are just entering the second, I suppose you could call it floor, I suppose. It's rather forested, it's not too unpleasant, except, you know, for all the horrible booby traps and murder and mayhem that you find throughout the level. I know that seems to be counterproductive, but I mean, I like the level. The actual greenery is very nice and pleasant, but the man-eating monsters and traps do tend to throw a bit of a downer on things. Now, this is the first sort of like floor, I suppose you could say, in the level, so there's nothing that particularly terrifying. Normally blue slimes and the occasional goblin, which isn't such a terrible thing. I mean, it's rather productive, I suppose. I mean, blue slimes can be rather annoying, for they have a rather large health pool, which is rather frustrating. But besides that, they're not that damaging if you get unlucky, and I suppose if you're not wearing particularly good equipment, they would probably beat you up. The reason I'm being able to move so quickly is that in the last episode we stumbled across a amulet of Olympic swimming, which means going through water is rather a quick business, and it's rather preferred. Ah yes, boulders. Everyone just loves boulders and recruiting NPCs. Now, as I've said, I'm of sort of mixed opinions about NPCs in this game. I wished you could tailor them. I wish you could tailor their commands, I suppose it would be, so they didn't pick up the best equipment all the time, which can be rather frustrating. And yes, as you saw, I just gave myself food poisoning. If this had been a Hunger game, that would have been a rather bad thing, and I managed to get myself poisoned, so not particularly fantastic. That is one thing to watch out for with the arrow traps. As you go lower down, they do poison damage, which is not particularly pleasant. Especially the deeper down you go, the more poison damage you get, which is rather dangerous, considering that I believe poison damage, unless you've got particular enchantments, is one of the things that does not get nerfed by relative skills. So you can see Defuax there trying to do in a blue slime. We do have friendly fire-ons, so it's probably a good idea not for me not to walk into his line of sight and take an arrow in the knee. I don't want to be hobbling around all over the place. On a side note, the remastered version of Elder Scrolls Skyrim will be coming out at the end of the week, which looks rather interesting. I am a massive fan of the Elder Scrolls games. I suppose my favourite out of all of them would have to be Morrowind. Partly to do with the fact was that they had a really great vampire mod in Elder Scrolls Morrowind, which basically allowed you to, it basically enhanced a lot of what being a vampire in Morrowind was about, and it allowed you to basically sort of seduce and convert people into, like, you could sire vampires, and it was really interesting. I had been founding when I last played it, I had been founding my own sort of like vampire clan, sort of slowly taking over a small town in Morrowind. Unfortunately, a bunch of vampire hunters sort of turned up, and I walked in one day and found that everyone was basically dead in my house. It was like, oh, vampire hunters. Yep, also another interesting thing that I've learned is that if you're looking at an enemy, you basically will get XP when it dies. That's how I believe it works. Most of the time I try and sort of join and help killing stuff off, because it sort of feels like you sort of get a feeling of accomplishment with helping people rather than sort of stealing all their stuff. Some poor NPC either got killed by an arrow or met a monster or something and got eaten. As I said, the NPCs in this game tend to die rather quickly. They're not. This is the thing I never understand. when you're fighting them, they've got absolutely buckets of health, but when they're fighting a monster, they die really quickly. I never quite understood that. Yes, the ambiguous slime. Blue variety. They do follow you a lot. That's the thing I always found quite... You had to be careful about slimes, that they really do follow you throughout the map. Especially on the wood floor, or forest floor, I suppose you could call it. The reason being is the fact that you can travel a lot with water, which means that you aggro a lot of the mobs, but they can't reach you, so they will literally go hunting for things, or hunting for you. No, I do hate slimes. Though I must admit, the slimes in this game are nothing in comparison to the slimes that you get in Sultan Sanctuary. I really, really hate those slimes. So hate those slimes. Ah yes, the old problem of there's monsters on the other side of the water. Good trick is to stand right on the edge of the water, and if you've got a long enough weapon like a spear or something, you can normally hit it. Gets rid of the enemies, rather straightforward. The Fuax managed to give himself food poisoning again. I must admit, it is nice playing without hunger turned on. I know that the developers prefer it when we play with hunger turned on, but I don't know. It makes the game a lot more of a challenge in some ways, and an unnecessary challenge. I mean, don't get me wrong, I like the hunger mechanic in this game, but the fact is that whenever we've played with hunger turned on, we never get enough food, and it's like, oh, we're all dying of starvation every 5 seconds. Which is not really enjoyable for us, and it's not really enjoyable for you, the viewers, so we tend to turn the hunger mechanic off just because we don't really want to make you have to watch us go running around going, oh my god, where's food, where's food? We'd rather watch us going, haha, we're going to bash things in with warhammers. That's the thing I wish they had in this game, warhammers. I mean, they have maces, which are nice, but a nice warhammer would be cool. And yes, the ubiquitous spider. I was hoping he's going to... I didn't expect 2 of them, to be honest, at the time. Felt rather bad for the Fuax at that point. I thought there was only 1. I was hoping that the NPC was going to be taken out, because they'd have a habit of grabbing all the best gear. So you sort of... Not being cruel, but we tend to kill them off through accidents, I suppose you could call them. That was a close miss. Yes, accidents. We tend to kill them off through accidents. Normally the bolder variety. Ah yes, this is where you start getting goblins in rather increasing varieties, which can also be used to get rid of NPCs. Not that I would ever suggest that you kill your computer-controlled companions, oh no, that would be a terrible thing. Horrendous what kind of adventurer sends his friend to a horrible death just so he can steal his equipment. And as you can just see, I got shot in the back by the Fuax. So, how was the run going by this point? I suppose you could say it was going not too badly. I mean, my health could be better. And we were lugging around a whole load of tins of canned food that we had no way of opening because the Fuax had died on the first floor or second floor and had lost all the can openers. I suppose we could have thrown them at people. Ah yes, giant spiders. Now that was a bit of a risky thing I did, because they can nominally hit you when in that kind of position if you're only 1 tile away. So it's normally advised not to be so close to them, just because they can reach you and it can be a rather bad thing. This is something I do find really interesting. We get a lot of gems. I don't know if the developers... this is the thing, like, you say you want the developers to change something, but then change the tone of the game, so it's one of those I sort of do and I sort of don't want to moments. I don't know, I think they sort of allow gems to be to be purchased at any store, not just at a jeweler's or general store, because then at least it would make the gems a bit more palatable to pick up, because for a lot of the time when you get a gem, to be honest, I throw it away. Ooh, here we go, wizard. Goblin wizards are actually really dangerous. because the fireball spells they have are really powerful. Normally by this point in the game you don't have necessary equipment. You can see what I mean here. Is watch. He literally one-shots the NPC, which is rather terrifying, and now he's got all the NPC's equipment. And I'm sort of desperately trying to avoid the evil man-eating goblin who has fireball spells and is like hunting us down. I meant to say wizard is in armour at that point, but I was a bit distracted by something else and typed it wrong. But no, that's one of the things you have to be careful of with the goblins, is that the goblins can actually pick up equipment, which can be rather worrisome. And also, he's got a bow, and I'm desperately trying to keep out of his line of sight because I haven't got a lot of health, and neither does the Fuax. Fortunately, I think something had already wounded him quite badly, so I was able to finish him off rather brutally with a sword cut to the neck, or a sword slash to the neck, I should say. I've been practicing my descriptive use of language during these things, just because it means it's a bit more enjoyable for you, the listeners. I do love D&D. I've always loved it. Unfortunately, I never could really get into it as a child, partly because there wasn't enough people to really do a full-blown D&D campaign when I was growing up. So I'm getting into it now as an adult. One of the benefits of being an adult, I suppose. On the lookout for insanely powerful wizards and shops. We'd got a lot of shops here, that was rather nice. And unfortunately, this is one of the really strange shops you can get. It's really useful, but at the same time rather frustrating, because it's, oh yes, an armour shop, that's fantastic, and then it's a hat shop, so all you get is hats. I do love that hat. There's a hat similar to it in I should say hat, it's a helmet similar to it in Skyrim that I really like. Had to be a bit careful with the Fuax at this point, because I didn't want him to steal my equipment. Not that he would, he's a very good-natured and hard-working teammate, so if you ask him to give your equipment back, he does, which is very nice. But yeah, it gets a bit hard, because obviously you need good equipment and he needs good equipment, so it's what do you do kind of thing. Now this episode is going to be relatively short. I think it's only going to be about 16 minutes long, partly because it got to a relatively good point in the adventure and I felt that it sort of deserved to be stopped there rather than go on and sort of be stopped in the middle of a floor. I like to end on when we reach a new floor, if you don't know. So just getting the equipment up, checking to make sure everything's nice and right, and we still press on after the Fuax is thrown up. I am rather grateful that we turned off the hunger. I mean, it's not too bad if you're playing on your own or with two people. The hunger is manageable, but with larger groups it gets rather dangerous. And yep, you saw I just dodged the boulder there. I hate the boulders in this forest section, they are so overpowered. But that's by the by. And we shall press on, gathering the lost loot from our dead NPC character. If you have liked, please press the like button. If you wish to subscribe, please press the subscription button. You can follow me on Facebook and on Twitter at the links provided below. I do always try to reply to comments with the best of my ability, so do not hesitate to leave some. I'm always happy to receive them. Now, I shall leave you to the last bits of our adventure. Goodbye.